It knew my name, but the voice coming from the woods was my mother's. Why would something in the Appalachian forest imitate the most trusted voice I know? The first thing I noticed was how quiet the woods had become. Not peaceful quiet. Not the kind campers post online with captions like, "Nature heals the soul." I mean the kind of silence that makes your brain start searching for danger before your eyes even know where to look. No crickets, no wind, no birds, just the soft crackling of our campfire, and 4 grown adults suddenly pretending not to notice how uncomfortable they were getting. And somewhere beyond the trees, something knocked against wood. 3 slow taps, like someone gently hitting a baseball bat against a tree trunk. Then it stopped. At the time, we still thought there was a rational explanation for everything. That's the dangerous part about Appalachia. The mountains let you believe that for a while. My name's Daniel, and this happened in eastern Kentucky back in October of 2019. There were 4 of us total. Me, my younger brother Tyler, Tyler's friend Mason, and Mason's uncle Rick, who claimed he knew those mountains better than the locals. That should have been our first warning, because people who actually know Appalachia, they don't brag about it. They respect it, especially after dark. We'd rented an old cabin about 12 miles off the nearest paved road. The listing online described it as rustic and isolated, which turned out to mean no cell signal, no nearby houses, and 1 dirt road in and out. Perfect setting for a relaxing weekend, right? Tyler loved camping. He was one of those guys who watched survival videos non-stop and thought owning a tactical flashlight counted as a personality trait. Mason mostly came because his girlfriend dumped him 2 weeks earlier. And Rick came because he wanted to hunt. He spent the entire drive talking about deer trails, black bears, and how city people panic too easy. That sentence aged horribly. The first strange thing happened before sunset. We were unloading gear near the cabin when Mason suddenly stopped carrying the cooler and stared into the woods. "Did you hear that?" he asked. We all paused. Nothing. Then, faintly, a whistle, far away. 3 short notes, not bird-like, human. Rick immediately looked irritated. Probably hikers, but the way he said it sounded forced, like he wanted the explanation more than he believed it. Tyler laughed it off. "Relax," he said. "Worst case scenario, it's hillbillies with moonshine." Honestly, that got a laugh out of all of us, at least at the time. By nightfall, the temperature dropped hard. The fire became the only comforting thing for miles. The woods around the cabin looked impossibly black, not dark blue, not shadowy, black, like the trees themselves were swallowing light. And that's when Rick told us the story. Apparently, locals avoided that section of forest because of disappearances going back decades. Hunters, hikers, campers, people gone without a trace. Now, obviously, every small town has stories like that, but Rick didn't tell it like some fun ghost story. He told it quietly, carefully, like he regretted bringing it up halfway through. "There are places out here," he said, staring into the fire, "where you hear things you shouldn't follow." Tyler rolled his eyes immediately. "Oh boy, here we go." Rick ignored him. "If somebody calls your name from the woods at night," he looked directly at us, "don't answer it." Silence settled over the fire. Then Mason smirked nervously. "What if it sounds like somebody we know?" Rick didn't smile. That's the problem. Now at this point, I still didn't believe any supernatural stuff. But I'll admit, something changed in the atmosphere After that conversation, nobody wandered far from the fire anymore. Nobody joked as loudly, and every time the woods creaked, all four of us looked up. Around midnight, Tyler volunteered to grab more firewood from the pile near the tree line. He disappeared into the dark with a flashlight. 10 seconds later, we heard him yell. Not scream, just a sharp, startled yell. We all jumped up immediately. Tyler, no answer. Rick grabbed his rifle, and for the first time all weekend, I saw fear on his face. We hurried toward the tree line and found Tyler standing completely frozen beside the wood pile. His flashlight pointed into the forest. At first, I didn't understand what I was looking at. Then I realized there was another light deeper in the woods. A flashlight, standing perfectly still between the trees, watching us. "Hello," Mason called. The light instantly switched off, just gone. No footsteps, no movement, nothing. The darkness swallowed whoever was out there. Tyler laughed nervously. "Okay, not funny anymore." Rick quietly told everyone to get back inside the cabin. That's when things started escalating. Inside, the cabin suddenly felt too small. Every window looked like an open invitation for something to stare back at us. Tyler kept trying to rationalize it. Probably hunters messing around. But even he sounded uncertain now. Around 1:30 in the morning, we heard footsteps outside. Slow, crunching through leaves, circling the cabin. Mason peeked through the curtains. "I don't see anybody." The footsteps stopped immediately after he said that. Then came 3 knocks on the cabin wall. Not the door, the wall. Knock, knock, knock. Nobody moved. I remember hearing the fire in the stove crackle, while all 4 of us just stared at each other. Then Tyler whispered, "Tell me that was a branch." Another knock answered him. Closer this time, from the back of the cabin. Rick chambered around into the rifle. And that sound, that metallic click, somehow made everything worse, because now the situation felt real. Nobody slept that night. At around 3 a.m., Mason finally muttered that he needed the bathroom. The cabin's plumbing barely worked, so the bathroom was basically an outhouse 20 feet away. Nobody wanted him going alone, but nobody wanted to go with him either. Eventually, Tyler volunteered. The 2 of them stepped outside carrying flashlights. The door shut behind them, and for about 30 seconds, everything was quiet. Then Tyler screamed, not startled, not surprised, terrified. We burst outside immediately. Their flashlights were shaking wildly near the outhouse. "What happened?" I shouted. Tyler couldn't answer. Mason pointed toward the woods. There was someone standing there. Where? Right there. But there was nobody now, just trees. Then we noticed the smell. Rotting, like wet earth mixed with something dead. Rick scanned the darkness with the rifle. "You boys get inside. Now." Nobody argued anymore. Back inside the cabin, Tyler finally explained what he saw. He claimed there was a person standing just beyond the trees, tall, too tall, and according to him, it smiled when the flashlight hit its face. Not a normal smile, a stretched, unnatural grin. Now listen, I know how this sounds. Sleep deprivation, fear, darkness playing tricks on people. That's exactly what I kept telling myself, until the voice started. Around 4 a.m., somebody outside softly said my name. "Daniel." Every hair on my arm stood up instantly. The voice sounded exactly like my mother. Not similar, exact. Same softness, same tone. coming from outside the cabin window. Daniel. Tyler heard it too, because his face immediately lost color. Rick slowly shook his head at us, warning us not to respond. The voice moved along the side of the cabin. Then it spoke again. Closer. It's cold out here. Mason started crying. Not loudly, just silent, terrified tears running down his face. And honestly, I wasn't far behind him, because deep down, every single one of us understood something horrifying in that moment. Whatever was outside was trying to lure us out. Then came the scratching, long, slow scraping across the cabin walls, like fingernails dragging over wood, back and forth, back and forth. The sound lasted nearly 20 minutes. At some point, Tyler whispered, "What if it gets inside?" Nobody answered him, because nobody had an answer. Eventually, dawn finally started bleeding through the windows. Gray light filtered into the trees, and the sounds stopped. Just stopped, completely. The silence afterward felt almost worse. Rick waited another hour before opening the cabin door. The forest looked normal again. Birds chirping, wind moving branches, morning sunlight everywhere. Like the mountain was pretending none of it happened. We packed our things faster than I've ever packed anything in my life. Nobody talked much. We just wanted out. But right before leaving, Mason noticed something beside the cabin. Marks in the dirt, footprints, except they didn't look human. They were long, misshapen, and impossibly deep, like whatever made them weighed several hundred pounds. The tracks circled the entire cabin, over and over and over, then disappeared directly into the woods. Tyler kept trying to joke during the drive home. You know that nervous humor people use when they're close to panicking. At one point he laughed and said, "Well, at least we saved money on a haunted house attraction." Nobody laughed, especially Rick, because Rick looked genuinely disturbed now. About halfway home, he finally spoke, quietly. "There's a reason locals don't whistle in those mountains." Mason stared at him. "What does whistling mean?" Rick hesitated, then said something I still think about constantly. "In Appalachia, if you hear whistling at night," he looked out the truck window, "you're supposed to pray it's human." After that trip, Tyler stopped camping entirely. Mason moved to Florida 6 months later and refuses to discuss that weekend. And Rick sold his hunting property in Kentucky less than a year afterward. As for me, I still wake up sometimes hearing that voice outside the cabin window, soft, patient, pretending to be someone I trust. And the worst part, there's one detail I never told the others. That final morning, while we were loading the truck, I looked back toward the trees one last time, and for just a second, I saw someone standing between them, watching us leave. Tall, unmoving, smiling. Which part disturbed you most? The whistling, the voice, or the thing smiling in the trees?